You know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
That was one of the early things that Donald Trump said that should have been a massive red flag to his supporters, but unfortunately was not. And it's proven largely true among his supporters. There does not seem to be anything he could do that would cause him to lose their support. But the election does not come down to just his supporters or Biden's supporters. There are people in the middle. And ever since he was found guilty, and I'll remind everyone as many times as I can of 34 felonies, we've been wondering, what effect is it going to have? Is this the thing that can finally move the needle? And the polls are starting to come in. Now we're going to start with perhaps the least troubling for Donald Trump, and we will move up from there. But here is the overall idea of whether people think that he was guilty or not. So YouGov did a snap poll right after the verdict was announced, and they found that 50% believed Trump was guilty, while 30% thought that he was not. Morning Consult had a poll, 54% approved of the jury's verdict, while 39% disproved. And I understand what YouGov is going with the way that they worded that, but I just want to be clear. He was guilty because he was found guilty. It's not actually an opinion. Now I understand it's whether you agree with the verdict, but I also think that these polls are interesting and you need to take them with a major grain of salt, because you're technically asking people, independents, Democrats, and Republicans, do you agree with the jury? That's not really what people are answering. The 30% of the country that said that he's not guilty, they're not wading through the evidence.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. Listen, in order for the Damage Report to keep on going, we need viewers like you to become a member on YouTube. Can you click the join button on YouTube today? Thank you.
They don't know anything about the case. It's 30% of the country that was asked a question, and one of the responses seemed supportive of Trump, so they said that one. That's it. But again, it still matters, this poll, because we're trying, after all, to see what percentage of these different groups support Donald Trump. So let's continue. So 15% of Republicans think that Trump is guilty, 64% do not. That is deeply distressing. 48% of independents think Trump is guilty, while 25% do not. So the Republicans are super biased. Nobody can be surprised by that, but the independents are a little bit more open to whether they think this was justified. In the Morning Consult poll, 18% of Republicans approved of the verdict, 74% did not. That was even more biased, perhaps. 52% of independents approved of it, while 33% disproved. And again, nobody expects Republicans to flee, en masse from Donald Trump. Nobody thinks that's going to happen. It is really going to come down to what effect in terms of encouraging or discouraging vote it has amongst the two sort of bases, but much more important, what effect it has on the independents. And this is implying that it could perhaps have an effect on the independents. Let's move now to an ABC News poll. Okay, so they found that nearly half, 49% think that Trump should end his 2024 presidential campaign after being convicted. I don't know entirely how to interpret that. That seems high. It seems higher than the percentage of the country that generally says they're definitely supportive of Joe Biden. So it seems like he's getting some people that he wouldn't normally. You'd think that should be a little bit higher. You'd get almost all the Democrats and some of the Republicans. It's still just about half though. In that poll, 16% of Republicans said the verdict was correct. So it is very much a minority position. Now here's what's most depressing though. So that 49% that we just talked about, let's go back to April 2023. So this is early in the process of the trial. 48% thought that he should suspend his campaign because of the indictment. So those are not the same thing, but the number's pretty close, that think an indictment should lead to a suspension and a guilty verdict should lead to canceling. You would hope that that number would have gone up more than 1%. But anyway, let's turn now to one more poll. 47% of Americans said they think that the charges against Trump were politically motivated, while 38% said they were not. Now, if I was Trump, I would point to that. And that's the sort of narrative that they've been using this whole time. At the same time, the slight majority of 51% think that Trump intentionally did something illegal in this case. So I love that. Not because it necessarily makes me think that people are going to turn against Trump, but it shows the ability to think in a nuanced fashion about what's going on. You can say that the charges had a political element and still think that he was guilty. I like that, because if he hadn't been president, maybe they wouldn't have gone forward with this if he wasn't so high profile. But at the end of the day, he still did do it. And so I'll take that nuance. I do like that. Now, an issue for Donald Trump is that the majority of independents say that Trump received a fair trial. Again, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to change their vote from where it was going to be, but he wanted to come out of this with the perception being that this entire thing was illegitimate, and it doesn't look like he got what he wanted in that particular case. And so, look, we need rolling polls, we need comparisons to earlier months, and all of that is going to be coming over the next few days, the next week or so, and we're going to be breaking it down. But while there's a little bit here that I think that Donald Trump can sort of hang his hat on, especially when it comes to keeping the Republicans locked down, which is not nothing. He does not want to be replaced at the RNC. I didn't think that was likely. This makes me think it's even less likely than that. There is also potentially fertile ground for some people, especially independents, to turn away from Donald Trump as a result of this. That is what I'm going to be looking for, and I can't wait to see what future polls come. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?